Okay.
Oh, call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Melissa.
Councilmember Boucher.
Here.
Councilmember Woodward.
Here.
Councilmember Brunner.
Here.
Councilmember Jennings.
Here.
Councilmember Menon is absent. Councilmember Durr.
Here.
And Council President Moll.
Here. Do we have any public comments this afternoon?
Just a couple of words. I was just reading this new policy with public comments, and first of all, it says we need to announce this. What I'm doing is I'm working to put this on social media. I'm working also to make it a live streaming. So if you see it, it's announced. If you want me to announce it every time we come here, I will, but please tell me if I need to. The second thing I wanted to say is I noticed here something about questions. The Sunshine Act specifically says that we can ask questions. It doesn't mean that you have to immediately answer them, but you may or may not answer them. But the way this is worded sounds like we're not allowed to ask questions in the open. So just a note. And what I wanted to say is, today is Martin Luther King Day, and I think it's unfortunate that we don't observe it. Township of Springs, at least, from what I know, observes it. It's a federal holiday. I think it says a lot about us, but I will let that up to you. But I would encourage you to start observing this in court. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Okay, Michelle, John.
Steve, could you dial Colleen, please?
Hi Colleen, this is Steve Brunner from Wyomissing Borough Council. How are you?
Hi Steve, I'm well, how are you?
Good, you're on speaker, so you're here and live.
Wonderful, thank you. Hi everyone.
Do you want to take it away, Michelle?
Sure, so Colleen, I have council as a whole as well as borough staff, department heads in the room. We are all prepared to talk about the projects we've brought to the table to council's attention that we think are suitable projects for grant funding purposes. I did forward council the memo that you sent to Rob and myself this morning, detailing the rec department specific projects for the Berkshire Heights playground equipment, and then also for the study of the Stonehouse area. So they have both of them. And at this point, I guess at council's choice, how would you like to proceed? Would you like each department head to state what their project is?
Sure. I mean, from my perspective, if you could go department by department, that would be helpful, and then I can respond in kind.
Okay. Rob, do you
And have you had an opportunity to discuss what might be a priority, for example, for RAMP for this year, or?
No, so I think we have 3 potential projects for that council
Okay.
needs to make a decision on.
Okay, fantastic.
Rob?
Okay, so Colleen and I spoke, I believe it was last week, correct, Colleen?
That's right, sir.
Yeah, and, I gave her 5 items which, were worth discussing. And then we, batted some things around and talked about it. As a matter of a priority, we looked at safety and risk. I think for the playground equipment, the old equipment that's over at Berkshire Heights. The fitness court, while that's a great amenity and in addition to our rec areas, I think, and I feel that the playground equipment would be a priority just based on risk factors of children getting hurt there. The second thing was already approved in the budget for this year is to conduct a master study plan of the Stonehouse area and grounds for making improvements to the pond, the spillway, and other factors. In that we could get matching funds for, since we already have that money set aside for this year's budget. So those were the two priorities that Colleen had written up and presented in the paperwork.
What were the other three?
Well, the fitness court was one, paving of the trails was another, and,
Stonehouse.
oh, the bridge, yeah.
So are we going to prioritize these one at a time, Colleen, or what's your pleasure?
So in terms of those priorities, I have recommended we take a look at primarily two sort of bodies of programs. One would be PAECDE, which is the economic development arm for the Commonwealth. They have within a program called ACSERT, or body programs called ACSERT, the Marcellus Legacy Fund. There are a number of programs you can look at specific to playground equipment, which is something we've used this particular program for another part of the Commonwealth. Is a program called Greenways, Trails, and Recreation. And that is, you can get up to $250,000 grant funding for a project, and it has a relatively low match for most Commonwealth programs. It just requires 15%. It would open in February and they're due in May. And I think public playgrounds from a safety perspective and prioritization would be a strong applicant. Rob, you can also do trail surfacing with that as well. So I think internally, you would all need to sort of decide, is it the safety project and the playground equipment upgrade you'd like to do, or is it the trail paving this year? I wouldn't recommend submitting two applications in the same grant period for the same program from the same applicant, just because you'll work against yourself. So it's really a matter of prioritization. Now, DCNR also has another body of programs called Community Conservation and Partnership. And within that are individual programs that fund different things all related to open space, public recreation, green space, rivers conservation, that type of thing. And that is something Rob and I talked about. The borough had been precluded in prior years from applying for that because of the restriction on public facilities and recreation facilities to folks who live, only residents of the borough. And I understand from Rob that that ordinance was recently changed. The signs are going to be changed here imminently. So that's something we wanted to communicate to DCNR. So we can do a site visit, which I think is a great idea. And we can show them multiple sites to see what really hits kind of more targeted sense of what's going to be kind of the big master plan for recreation and open space. See what that's the priority there. So either of those would work for both the trail repaving as well as the playground rehabilitation, and it would also support a planning grant. Both of those programs would support planning grants for the master plan for the Stonehouse ground. Now again, DCNR's program requires a 50% match, so in order to leverage your greatest amount of tax dollars or amount of budget, DCD would probably be a better program for those types of things. But I think re-engaging DCNR certainly into the borough to say, hey, we made a change in our ordinance, we know that this is a requirement for your program, and just getting them involved, because this will help review these applications with DCD regardless. So I think that's just something we can do first year this year.
Rob.
Really, your group just discussing, which two do you think you want to do? Do we do it with one program, one for planning, one for development, or do we want to split the priorities between DCNR and DCD?
Well, I remember when we talked about this before, we had to do some paving of driveway, the road, whatever.
Yeah, there has to be ADA compliant parking as well as ADA compliant walkway.
Is that included, are we encompassing that in with this, or is that a totally separate issue?
We would want to include it in that, yeah, as a complete package.
What's the number on that?
I think the playground equipment and stuff was around probably be, on top of that, I'd say 2, safe to say.
The trails.
Well, it'd be a walkway, not so much the trail.
It's a trail from
From the
designated parking spots.
To the.
And where were we talking about putting the designated ADA parking?
Alongside that hill there, right at the
On the
edge,
hill.
yeah, because there's less than, the grade is under 5%.
If anybody hasn't been over there in a while, take a walk over or ride over there, and, it's not good. The equipment's old, it was bad when my kids were over there playing baseball, and that was 10 years ago now. I don't think anything has changed. And that driveway slash road, whatever it is back there, if I remember correctly, you have to pick the right spots to drive up, or you're gonna get stuck in a
Yeah.
couple ruts. So it's something clearly that needs to be taken a look at, on the rec side.
It's the first thing Matt Hoffman said to me when I got on council, is you gotta really take a look at that equipment over there, it's in bad shape.
Yeah.
Colleen, just a question, and I agree, we don't wanna fight one grant against the other. And this is just for sake of knowledge, the bridge, walking bridge at the Stone House from Parkside Drive South onto, near where the pond is, could that fall under, that needs to be replaced at some point? Does that fall under one of these grants also?
There's these programs with support for replacement of a bridge, if it's in a public park or recreation area. Certainly, I've used, again, both of those, kind of used both those programs to replace pedestrian bridges that actually span roadways in other counties, other projects, so we've done that. The multi-level transportation fund as well also would support replacing a pedestrian bridge. And that's something, we haven't talked about what 2020, 2021 looks like with the funding, but hopefully, we finish off 4th Street with PennDOT and some other funding, and then, we also have other things we can look at this year for multimodal, and that bridge would certainly, because that's probably a larger cost, I would assume, of all the things we just discussed. I don't know how it works.
It was budgeted at about $100,000, Colleen, it's Michelle, to kind of roll multiple projects together, kind of like similar to what we did on 4th Street. Could we tie that bridge into a streetscape project? And
Absolutely could, yep.
even if they're, 180 was what was budgeted for the bridge, even if that bridge is nowhere near where the streetscape improvements would be?
It would have to be in the same vicinity, there has to be a way to connect it. But,
It's connected by the bike route?
Pedestrian trail, doesn't have to be full streetscape to be eligible for multimodal, so you don't necessarily have to put in streetlights or, directional signage or that type of thing. It could be a paved, multi-use trail, for
No.
example, that would eventually lead to the bridge. So if there's some sort of connectivity that we can show in a map, I would have to look at a map, to give you a good read, but it's probably in.
Yeah, that I think that would be tough, because I'm referring to streetscape, street lights, benches, trash cans, specifically on the full stretch of Penn Avenue. And while that stretch does connect to the area where this bridge is, it would be via our bike route. So, not really in close proximity.
So Colleen, John here, I wondered, and Michelle and I were talking about it the other day, so we're getting this grant, we already got 200, we're probably gonna get some more from PennDOT, and we have these other irons in the fire. Isn't there a big picture person in Harrisburg who'd say, hey, Wyomissing is 10,400 people, they're getting all this state money. Does that happen or what?
Not unless there's an issue that somebody, maybe another legislator says, hey, you had your turn last round, wait, but I've never really seen that dynamic with greenways, trails, and public use projects, as much as I have with, say, RACP. If you keep going in year after year for a RACP project, you might get some pushback from some folks, but as long as you're a good steward with the Commonwealth money, and you have a great cheerleader and supporter in Jenny Granger at PennDOT, who heads up multimodal, and then Ryan Emerson at ACED's side also is, maybe the right terminology, but very supportive of what the program's doing, as long as we can point to, if there's a master plan here, where there's a, a comprehensive plan that really stipulates these several years of improvement, and just keep going back in and say, okay, we completed this one, we're under construction, here's the next phase. I don't really envision pushback. So there's different ways we can position that. And Kathy's not on the call, but certainly we can call with Kathy to see how she would present that to various decision makers.
We move on to Jim.
Well, and I think just to clarify, the important point here is the grant programs identified in this memo that Kathy sent for Rob's project specifically, we would not be competing against ourselves for the other RACP programs. So the next 3 projects we're gonna talk about, which library, fire station, public works facility,
And MS4.
and MS4, would be our suggestions for the RACP program, Colleen.
Okay.
These are all doing 120 days. These are all doing 120 days. The red ones,
These are,
May 30.
yes, well, RACP's even smaller, it's a 30-day window from when it opens.
Okay.
So, I have the public works garage cost estimate up on the screen. Colleen, you have a copy of that, correct?
I did.
Okay.
I don't know how many of you have been over to Garage in recent years, but over time, we're outgrowing that facility, and it's aging. We've added an overhang off the back to get leaf collectors under some sort of roof that they were never under the roof. We've added racking and shelving to take things up. We stack our snow plows on racks just so we have more ground space. We put snow plows on undercover, but outside. The mechanic has no designated spot. He works on the floor where the trucks are parked, more or less. We have nowhere to wash vehicles, other than on the driveway, outside. We just had the lunchroom for the amount of people that work out of there is too small. The locker room is too small. The office space is too small. And it needs enlargement. You guys have given us $15,000 to do a study in last year's budget. We talked with Jim and with, who's the architect? Lee Olson. Put some ideas down on paper to basically, not redo, but, to keep the existing building with some modifications and to add a new building on site that will also benefit the police department. They would have some storage. If they have a car that they need to investigate, they'll have a space for that. And this is what came out of that study. And in a nutshell, we're looking at $3.4 million for a garage. It's a lot of money, but from talking to other people who've recently done them, Shillington, Kumru, Muhlenberg, that's the number.
And you said that, and I'm looking at the preliminary estimate, the October 22nd budget, the police department improvements, did I hear you say that's storage, or is that, can you just talk about that a little bit more?
It's some
What
storage.
that 670,000
It's some
represents?
storage for evidence, and it's some storage for a vehicle that they have to fingerprint or do some detective work on.
Tom, can I make a comment? Hi, this is Pat. A lot of the things in the public works garage, while it sounds off the top where we need a place to wash the truck, or we need a place for overhang, or we need a place for maintenance. The problem is today is with all the MS4 requirements, all the stormwater response requirements and so forth, you can't just pull a truck out because a commercial vehicle or a public works vehicle and wash it off on the street and let it drain down the drain. It has to go into a water separator, it has to be collected, it has to be sorted, it has to be tested, it has to be disposed of properly, and it has to be used. So these are the kind of things that are particular in this type of facility, where it looks like it's just semantics, but actually it is requirements. Just like the shop, it has to have the proper lighting, it has to have the proper floor rates, it has to have the proper oil separators. So those those are the type of things that this architect has taken into account, as part of the project.
So there's no, does that mean moving the garage is off the table?
The proposal, the discussions we had early on with this last year were to remain at that site because we were gonna continue to use the existing structures. Since that time, through discussions, now I understand there might be some thoughts of moving its location due to the property value there with the new road. That's not a decision for me, but these numbers are based on staying where it's at.
Really don't have any kind of cost estimate on taking the facility up and moving it, because that would involve land costs, total building costs, and infrastructure costs.
Well, they were estimating 8 to 10 million to move, to redo what we have and all this at a new location. We didn't get to this level of detail, it was just more high level budgeting between Olson and Osborne.
Want to keep going there, Jim, with?
Yeah, the next item, would be MS4. We've all been talking about this for, well over a decade now, probably a decade and a half. A year or two ago, we signed an intermunicipal agreement with the Wyomissing Creek Coalition. And the coalition is the seven members that all contribute stormwater to the Wyomissing Creek. We're all in the drainage basin. And our intent, or the intent of that group, is to get our sediment reduction that we're gonna have to do per the DEP, to do it as a group, as opposed to individually. It makes sense, it's simpler to do it as a group. That agreement states that the costs, and I'll get everybody copies of this, I should have had Michelle put it up on the board, is based on our urbanized area and acreage, and Wyomissing's cost would be 20% of the total cost of whatever work the coalition does. And they're estimating, by the end of this permit cycle, that the total cost for the whole coalition is $2 million. Our cost, $400,000, that's 20%. I don't see these costs happening in 2020. I doubt 2021, more likely 2022, 2023. And this does not include, this is for the Wyomissing Creek. We also have to do work on the Toppahawken Creek watershed that we're not part of any organization for. That those costs would be borne all on us, and I don't know I don't know what that number would be, but it would be
400.
substantial. Was it 400 for that too?
400,000 for the 5-year cycle we're currently in.
The problem, why we don't have a good timing answer is we submitted a new permit application in 2018, and now it's 2020, and we've never received correspondence from the DEP that they've reviewed it and accepted it. So it's still in limbo, and that keeps extending our time frame for when these costs will start happening, because we don't really have a permit yet.
With the permit cycle.
Michelle, that might be something we want to engage Kathy in.
Okay.
2 years is pretty egregious if you haven't heard, or a year and a half haven't heard back anything. from
Nobody
the
has.
office.
Yeah, that's not just us, that's statewide.
No one statewide that has been in a stream that has any impairment has been issued a permit. If you're in a non-impaired stream, your permit has been issued. So they said that the initial permits that were applied for in 2013 that were again never issued if you were in a impaired watershed have been administratively extended since 2013 till whenever they issue it. So you're technically under a permit that has never been issued, that you don't know the rules and regulations of what you're supposed to follow, but you're required to follow them, is their official answer.
And Colleen, I don't know the answer to this as far as monies go, but in the end, with the Wyomissing Creek, we would end up getting an invoice from the Wyomissing Creek Coalition for a joint venture, if you will. It wouldn't be, we'd be contributing to a bigger kitty. I don't know how that works grant-wise, unless the grant would go to the whole coalition. I don't know.
The coalition.
In the end, we're just gonna get an
I would
invoice.
approach this, one, I would say this isn't something that RACP would cover because it's primarily stormwater, which is not something RACP can do stormwater as part of a larger redevelopment project or project, but not solely a stormwater project. This would be more suitable for a program called H2O, that just closed a couple months ago. It should open up again later this fall. I would say that the $2 million overall project is the project you would submit on behalf of the coalition, and then, you know, if we were successful, then proportionally, whatever the award was, then those municipalities would, you know, receive that benefit from the grant. But this is a perfect project for H2O. H2O does water, wastewater, sanitary, and stormwater improvement projects, including MS4 type projects.
Colleen, is that the same as the PA small sewer, small water?
It's the same family, Michelle, but PA small water and sewer, the maximum project cost is $250,000, so, you know, very small projects. H2O can fund up to $20 million for the project.
Whoa, what's the match on that, just out of
Big
curiosity?
difference. Yeah, PA small water and sewer is like baby H2O, if you will.
Do you know what the match typically is for H2O?
I believe it's 30%, but I'll go back in and double check.
Okay, well. we need to
Is there
stay
some
focused
sort
on
of
that.
shelf life to the grant that if we got approved for X number of dollars, it's gotta be spent within a certain time frame because we don't know when we're gonna get a green light?
All of them have that.
Generally, the infrastructure projects, water, wastewater, stormwater, and then the MTS is a 3-year grant performance period. And you're allowed typically two extensions beyond that, so call it 5 years. And then I've seen a couple MTS that they've extended a third time. So I'd say 5 to 6 years is your grant performance period.
Okay, so
Alright.
I'll add that one to the list.
And the third one is the library. The library isn't cut and dry, because I think we have a lot more in-house discussion on this, but we had an architect go over the building mechanically when we purchased it, and he came up with one big number for what he's calling priority one repairs. These have to do with the exterior envelope of the building, the general construction, mechanical, and electrical. And he came up with $713,000 of priority one. I don't know if we need to do all of those urgently. We have some roof issues that we're gonna be discussing later today. But it's, in the end, it's gonna be a chunk of money yet to be determined to rehab the library building.
Does that include the heating system?
He
That's
has some money in there for the
$713.
heating system. That's part of the 713.
In terms of, you know, libraries can be funded by RACP. This administration has done more libraries than the previous administration. You know, Rendell Library, some of the Rendell spent quite a few on the Spectre Library in Philadelphia. But it's certainly an eligible cost, and this is, while a large project, you know, all in priority one, priority two, $1 million, you know, just shy of $1 million. You know, half of that could be funded by RACP, so RACP is a 50-50 match. You know, you might have a bigger bang for your buck with the public works facility. Serves more purposes, including the public safety, the police department, law enforcement purpose. So in terms of, you know, if I was to compare the public works facility versus the library, I would say in terms of the programs, administration, legislators would rather get behind a public works facility that, you know, very directly supports that sort of function by the borough, including the law enforcement, public safety function. But either one, you know, is eligible to be funded. You know, I would maybe look to do half of a, you know, $3.4 million project. If that's something you were looking to undertake, that's less debt or less cash. borough would have to put in if you were successful. But either is eligible.
And
All I
then the third one to add to that would be the fire station. Now Colleen, when you and I had talked a week or two ago, I asked if there was federal money out there for, you know, fire station improvements, and I think you said that was something you were gonna look into.
Mhm. So USDA does have money for stations, and then if FEMA brings back, there are some physical facility funds that I haven't seen the new proposal for FEMA this fiscal year yet. It was not funded last year. Typically FEMA funds assistance to firefighters, or they fund safer things for equipment, firefighter, EMT positions. But traditionally, the bricks and mortar funding through FEMA has not been refunded in several years. There's also USDA funding, which is on paper by the MSA, it looks like Wyomissing would qualify as rural in that category, so we could pursue what USDA calls community facility funding, under which ironically libraries, courthouses also eligible. But the fire station improvement would fall under USDA funding or something. That's a great program. In addition to RACP, I mean, this administration loves to firehouse.
Do you know anything about the USDA program that you could give us any type of idea on, you know, benefits of funneling the fire department through USDA versus RACP, or would it make more sense to look at RACP for the fire department?
You could do both. Federal money matches state money, and vice versa. So theoretically, in an ideal world, you could pursue, federal funds are 80-20 grant funds, so the feds would fund up to 80% of the cost of an eligible facility. RACP is 50-50. For example, I've got a USDA project in Bucks County that has a public safety component, and there's a little bit of debt involved with it, but it's about 80% federal, about 50% RACP, and then some public bonds. But they play very well together, so there's no reason you couldn't apply for both simultaneously. USDA would be the bigger bang for your investment, but they pay up to 80%. I could give you a direct, give you a day or two, I can put together just a sheet that's sort of the two columns that compares the two programs, and you can have more information with you.
That would be great.
Okay, I'm gonna do that.
Okay, so I'm next, and the only project I have is Streetscape on Penn Avenue, which I already mentioned. Mike Cowder took some of the information he prepared for a similar streetscape improvement in West Reading, crunched the numbers for me, here in Wyomissing. So it's, and I didn't send this to you yet, Colleen, but I will. 170 LED street lamps, banner poles, curb and sidewalk repair, trees, removal and replacement where necessary, and then wayfinding signage. This is not including trash cans or any type of benches if we want to install those, and the cost estimate is roughly 4.5 million. So I would assume with the trash cans and benches, if we would do those as well, probably bump it up to 5.5.
And what's the extent of that?
That is the entire length of Penn Avenue from the 800 block out to the end of the 1700 block. You can see on the email that Mike sent me also includes, give me a sec for this to load, it's loading really slow for some reason today. He tied this into, this is Delaney Circle, so then he added on the 5th page, you can see he counted everything from 8th Avenue all the way out. The black dots represent trees, existing street trees, and then the yellow dots, which are really hard to see, represent street lights placed at 60-foot intervals, which would be consistent with what was done in West Reading. This is also using the same street light spec as what West Reading used to continue the continuity down the corridor.
Would it be fair to say, Penn, obviously, Penn Ave connects with the 4th Street project, so this could be the next sort of phase or stage of streetscape development in the borough.
Yes.
And it's the main commercial and it's the main thoroughfare through the borough, correct? So I mean, it's really focusing the attention on the gateway in and out.
Yes.
of the borough, is that a fair
Yes,
assessment?
that's a very fair assessment. It's also,
And, you know,
It's our news.
they were gonna build 4th Street this year, so, you know, if you were gonna wait, you got, you know, if we got the $2 million and then you had to wait 2 years to build 4th Street, I'd say let's wait to apply again to multimodal. But, you know, you're about to bid, you're about to get hopefully under, you know, contract later this year. It'll be under construction by the time we would theoretically apply for additional multimodal funding this summer. You know, be complete by the time they're making, or nearly complete time they're making awards. So that's a good story for both departments, for DCD and PennDOT, to say, hey, you know, the borough took these funds, they didn't even wait 6 months, they got started, they bid, they built it looks great. You're doing a ribbon cutting or, you know, some sort of ceremony, you know, with the deputies and the departments while we're, you know, waiting for approval of a new program or a new project. So it, obviously that's a great multimodal request, Michelle. Is West Reading going in for anything? I remember this, they
So-
had a project that would have competed perhaps last year,
that's,
but they took a step back so that you could go forward with 4th Street. Am I
John,
remembering that correctly?
John ever so nicely asked them to step down. What's shown on the first few pages of what I currently have pulled up and I'm going to send you is the Laney Circle, which is their streetscape improvement that they held off and I believe intend to submit for this year. So that was gonna be my next question, how does that work if we're competing against them? Or could we look at
And so
doing,
that, the Laney Circle's not in that $4.5 million. That's all borough one missing.
correct, would it make sense though, since, you know, we're already working together on the bike ped route with separate funding from PennDOT, to maybe start the conversation with West Reading, since I've learned legislators love these multi-municipal projects, to talk about doing a joint application with them.
Yeah, if you can you phase Penn Avenue, do you think?
Yeah, and
they could get
yeah,
the bulk of the
definitely.
Laney Circle in theirs, or, you know, half could be Laney Circle and then half could be a, you know, a phase one of Penn Ave.
Yes, definitely.
Yep. I think that would be one very grown up of you to do. Most municipalities do that, frankly. And you're absolutely correct in that agencies love multi-municipal projects, where they're not competing against one another in the same legislative districts. And they're projects that, you know, the success of one directly feeds and enhances the success of the other, but essentially function as one project. Because the vehicle's not gonna know it's leaving one municipality, or the person doesn't necessarily notice that. It's one continuous improvement. And the money goes farther, frankly, if you can do that. So if, I think it would be wise, before the multimodal open, to have those conversations, see what might be possible. You certainly increase both your chances.
Well, and they'd also benefit from having you and Kathy kind of working on their behalf through us.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm certain if you approach, you know, the senator and Rep. Gillen with this type of project, you know, they would be grateful because then they wouldn't have to, you know, make Sophie's choice necessarily.
Okay.
Which isn't to say both could not be approved in the same cycle, but it's, you know, less likely you would both get funded fully if you each have an application in. You'd probably then come back and say, look, I can give you each 50% of the actual, so I can make you a package,
Okay.
realistically.
I will reach out to the manager of West Routing and start the conversation.
Okay, great. And also Kathy, if you want to have a follow-up conversation, Michelle, you can certainly do that.
Okay.
With Kathy.
Any other department heads, Phyllis, do you have anything? What's it, Pat? Yeah. So my takeaway from this is it looks like Public Works would be our RACP project. Is that? RACP?
Yeah, I mean, if USDA is a good fit for you, I might recommend that the Public Works Facility is your RACP project, but I don't want to color your discussions. I think we could advance any of those three projects for RACP. You know, the library, I think, is probably number 3 in terms of what the administration would fund, just based upon, you know, what's 5 years of history now. The Public Works, the fire station, I think, would have equal chance of funding.
Colleen, how sure are
Very
you
close
that,
to.
how sure are you that we fall under the USDA for rural?
I will double check again, but I had a back and forth with the USDA rep from another region, And they thought that student facilities would be, that the borough would be eligible for student facilities. So I did get a definitive read from their office if you are interested.
That'd be a viable option for council, that's the fire station, USDA's, basically, because of all the federal standard and the AC county. Resources certificate, protect the states.
Yeah.
So I have one question for you, which may or may not make sense, but, so we apply for a grant for $1 million, we're just using round figures. It requires a 15% match, so that means the borough gets 850 grand in benefit from the state. But so we, say we need a, like for the park, or for the borough garage, say that's gonna cost $4 million with a 50% match, then the borough gets $2 million in benefit. Am I looking at it the wrong way?
No, that's accurate, that's correct. If you're fully funded for this thing, that's correct. There's nuances to these programs, and RASP, for example, is a reimbursement program, and it's absolutely 100% reimbursement, so you have to be able to bridge the RASP grant either through, cash or bridge loan, bond, something like that, and then they'll make you whole, once construction has started. Most of the DCED programs are sort of they will pay you monthly as construction goes, so you don't necessarily have to bridge it. If you have a relationship with your contractor where they can wait 45 days for payment, payment will usually keep pace with construction on the DCED program. So that's another consideration, potential cost of financing, et cetera.
So what's the plan here? Council gets to figure it out. And when do you need to know?
RASP is probably going to open, we look every Friday, they usually open on Fridays at 3 o'clock. Typical years it's usually open. I would say it would open by the beginning of February, be due beginning of March. It's always a 30-day period, so for the next 2 weeks, realistically, we need to know what your RASP project is.
And Colleen, you said in our application for RACP, we can be relatively vague as to, match funding source. We just have to say
Absolutely.
something.
We don't need to submit bank statements, we don't need to submit loan documents, we just need to talk about what that would look like. The borough would, appropriate funding for the development of the project through its general fund budget every year. It would incur bond financing, it would receive bond financing, and we can just be general about what a typical project approach might be. Once we're awarded funding, then we have, 6 to 9 months to get more specific with what that looks like and demonstrate we have match in hand.
Shouldn't we sort of take each project and look what the total potential is versus what the best case and worst case scenario of what the funding might be and where it might come from, so that we know where our net dollars would be that we have to allocate over whatever period of time? I mean, it sounds like
That's
there's
what I
a
was
bunch
getting at, but
there's
yeah,
sort of
you
like
said it better.
There's sort of a, thanks, John. There's sort of a bunch of different programs here, all of which can be funded from different sources. So maybe we need to take a master plan of all of these things, prioritize them, which apparently we've done, but prioritize them and then take the first priority and determine, okay, if we apply for this, what's the best case and what's the worst case in terms of potential funding and what that source would be, and sort of let them tell us where the best shot of getting that from would be, so that we will know what, I'm assuming that none of these projects are actually budgeted or money set aside for. So we almost need to calculate where our net dollars are gonna come from, and what the potential is gonna be, and then what the impact's gonna be based on that.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. I guess it's on us to figure out how quickly we can do that and get information back to Colleen. So we should have that conversation sooner rather than
It sounds like
later.
she's the one that needs to tell us,
Yeah.
based on that, where the best potential is gonna be.
I can do that. And why don't I build that comparison chart of USDA and RACP, so that I can give you a sense of, and I'll solidify the USDA eligibility, if I get that right for you. And then that'll help.
And also confirm that.
And that also just include columns for the Parks and Rec and open space, and other funding and MTS to understand what the matching department and payment looks like.
And then maybe,
RAC is really the only program you have to bridge. You know, even if federal funding pays as you go, it's really RAC that, you know, pay for half the project, but you definitely have to forward fund it. The others you can, you know, pay pre-development costs, you know, from your funds, but they will pay as construction.
maybe once you see that on a master plan, then to confirm that one doesn't negate the other, so that it doesn't, if you apply for this one, you're not eligible for this one. And then determine if you are, which one's more of a priority, which one gives you the better bang for your buck.
Colleen, this is Chris, the borough solicitor. To what extent are these various funding programs all or nothing, or do they sometimes provide partial funding?
In almost every case, they have the ability to provide partial funding. So we were fortunate to receive $2 million from the DTD multimodal fund, but I believe we asked for the full $3, correct, Michelle? I'm remembering that correctly. So that became a negotiation with, we can't give you 3, but we'll look at other programs to fill the gap. So in every case, even RACP, just if you apply for 1.5, they're not going to say it's either that or 0. They'll come back generally when they're negotiating. The legislators and leadership will say, hey, we could do $900,000 or we could do $1 million. Can you still do the project? And if the answer is yes, if you want to have a floor in mind of where does it no longer make sense to accept the award. But for most, in every program we talked about, I'm looking for my sheet here, none of them are an all or nothing.
Hey Colleen, John here. Do Michelle and I have the pleasure of making more trips to Harrisburg?
Absolutely. You see that train coming down the track. Of course. We would make the best of your time again, of course.
Well, should we bring Rob or Jim Babb along? If I know they're both very busy, but it would help us, especially for the large numbers. I think we can talk about playgrounds, but what goes on at the borough garage, I'm a little shaky on.
Sure. To the extent you can have, public works director there to say, hey, here are the direct benefits this is going to provide, here are the improvements we're going to do, here are the implications to us servicing the residents and taxpayers, and then, on the other side, Rob, say, look, here's what the equipment looks like, here's the functionality, here's why safety is an issue, and, very specifically discuss the improvements to the access to the playground. All of those things are benefits, so, yes, we'll try to minimize those trips for everybody.
Is it beneficial that
But
they
we don't need
be,
to bring Rob to talk about the fire station, right? No. Unless you want to.
is it beneficial that they be there in person, or would that pull more weight, or if they would just list all the pros and would submit that?
Well, I can handle that part of it, except for the fact that I didn't want to drill down and ask a question I don't know the answer
About the
to.
improvement, or, can speak directly to the project, can be there in person, it sends a signal, not just credibility, but it sends a signal to the funders, hey, the borough thought enough about this and has invested enough that, we're making our key personnel available for a day out of the office, essentially, so they can be here to explain how important this project is to what they do every day. So, and that just resonates with everybody we meet with.
I think John and I saw that firsthand this summer, that, they were impressed not only that we showed up, but that there were 2 of us and we were able to speak about the project and what the benefit was.
It's always better when, all of you can do this, with our guidance and, certainly fill in points that, having a consultant for the lobbyist sitting there explaining it's not quite the same as, having the folks who are invested in it, those meetings, having done that.
Colleen, this is Chris again. On the fire station project, if we were to pursue the USDA funding, is that a grant-only program, or could that be a grant and/or low-interest loan?
It can be both. So it can definitely be both. There's also other USDA funds that are strictly low interest loans, to some up to 40-year terms, so it's pretty reasonable. If you're interested in more USDA funding and you're eligible, we can certainly send details on other programs.
I think we're interested.
Yeah. I'd say we're interested.
Okay, sure.
Colleen, I will follow up with you and Kathy tomorrow that we can kind of recap and, figure out who's doing what to move forward. And
Sounds good.
we'll go from there.
All right, and we'll do additional due diligence on USDA and put that chart together for you to make a comparison.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for making time.
Take care, Colleen.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that was right.
Interesting.
She does that for a living, and when we get an page and a half of the synopsis of what the grants are available, it's a little hard to get my arms around it.
Well, that's the nice thing about being able to just catch her on the phone or in person, that you can ask specific questions. It's not the back and forth.
They keep thinking, none of these are free, they all have matching.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we don't have any of those matching on the budget. So we're all,
Well, not this year's budget.
No, but this would all be next year.
So you don't have a capital account, a contingency fund that you contribute to, like a reserve account for future capital expenditures?
we have a shrinking capital.
It's going the wrong way.
Keith, it's just like we're in a position now that we haven't been in for a long time. The reserves are going down. We're getting a lot done, there's no doubt about it, but we probably have to act like real municipalities going forward.
Yeah, true. Anything else for the,
Well, I think we need to set a time for making this decision about giving Colleen specific guidance.
okay.
Economic development meets next Thursday, the 30th. That would
Does
kind of
that
fall.
give her enough time to,
Well, I
I'd
mean,
like to
even
get
if
my
it,
hands on that chart before then.
oh, I have a feeling I'll have that chart tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest. She's very good about follow-up. I mean, and I'll reiterate when I talk to her tomorrow, ask her to send the chart as soon as possible, but give her a lead-in that we'll most likely discuss this at economic development on the 30th, recommendation for council to formally approve at their meeting in February, which I think is the 11th. But again, that's a consensus of council.
Don't we have the tour on the third?
That's not till, that's not formally on the agenda, it's whenever economic development's over. That's why Steve and I said it between 9 and 10 a.m.
Yeah, council's on the 11th.
I mean, if
is
RACP,
that enough time?
if RACP would open as early as this Friday, which would be the 24th, it would be open through roughly February 24th, so yes. I think if we could give her a lead-in that she could start preparing documents based off of what economic development decides on the 30th, she moves forward with formally submitting after the 11th when council votes. Chris, are you okay with that?
Yeah, okay, so we'll just, we'll reconvene at economic development.
Okay. Workshop Tuesday.
Any other business to be brought before council this afternoon? Hearing none, we'll we'll stand adjourned and move into infrastructure. We'll just give everybody a chance to.
Jim, how are you?
Good, how are you?
So that bridge at the Stone House over the Parkside Drive South.
Yeah,
Is that gonna be adequate?
I don't have a little bit of a.
It's Chris's, yeah.
Okay. Is there, now there's like
You
three
guys
steps.
Maybe, maybe
Oh,
11.
Is there like a letter or something just saying that?
The one at
Was there
my
any
article?
Shep didn't receive anything?
There's no steps, you just walk right up.
He was just asking me if I got
It's
it.
like a little paved thing.
Stick to a normal spot.
Yeah, there's no up or
Down.
down.
Or just-
There's no steps there. The one that had steps all the time. What was the other one that fell down? I had steps.
Yeah, the one
up
just
on
downstream from Bruce
That's
Bridge.
the Bruce Bridge. That's that.
That's
That's that one itself.
Do you remember we were talking about that?
It's just an interesting thing because they never would let that. Never. Just, the old Navy.
I mean, if nothing else, we think of the 2020 meeting, they gave you list all of the committees and authorities, so to speak, and then the agreements and what to show that
Okay.
you were current.
Should be 5 years, you can go down again and bring it up.
No, okay, they're all different, some are 1 year, some are 3, some are 5.
Right.
So whatever that particular,
Or,
To be honest, I don't know if there's, I guess I started in the middle of the term, so like filling in people worry, but yeah, you know what, if you can just, yeah, send that just says whatever. If you want to just send that to Chip so that at least they have it.
that's just getting it.
I can probably do it online.
Yeah, you choose online, I see it just
I don't have a PDF version, only Word, but we can create a PDF.
Just want to,
Both saying now.
just so that they have a record of it, I can get a copy of it.
Yeah, wasn't a state highway, we could run it on travel.
You expire in 2024. Days at the end of this year, you'll get it.
What, are you trying to get off? You've had someone.
No, Chip was asking me if I had any official documentation that I'd been reappointed. We just assumed, so.
It was a
Say about it soon.
Yes.
It was a contested race. There was like 37 candidates.
People banging the table.
Everyone wanted to get on the water.
You causing trouble again?
Always.
Somebody has to. No, it's just orders. That knew the budget for this year. Yes.
I didn't know you had like do the enforcement.
I literally met with him on Friday for coffee, was like, this is what I need from you. He was part of the society's plan like 15 years ago when they did it.
that's what I was told.
We went to the black traffic center too. Well, what's the water?
I mean, you don't realize that close to
Everything
his
between
house.
requirements.
They're bringing everything. No, they
Not everything.
Oh, really? Not for all that. Yeah, they did sporadic.
They get this down, they'll use it for all months.
But they're replanting in the spring. They're probably not gonna be.
Because Avocet and Paul's driving now, they're taking bets. Who's got the worst drive?
It's going one way.
That's staying in the alley. Yep, stays public.
You see a lot more broken windows. We're gonna do the same thing, we do a number,
I thought we went it this
we're
way.
gonna go for balls with Bill Jenkson's name and his phone number. And anyone who finds one calls his number.
Thanks, thank you. No, that is not a vacated behind the.
The dead end of the railroad.
This one?
Yeah.
So he came up to the house.
That was the minimum. This is the one that's getting passed, being vacated past the last house, but not being vacated behind this house. Our director was.
Okay, well, I don't have Mr.
Yeah, there's a new deed of consolidation. There's a new deed of consolidation of the public works property, which comes down the center,
Okay.
goes up this property line over and then around.
We're ready to go.
The gavel.
20 minutes late. Okay. We'll call the infrastructure meeting to order and get started here. And to begin with an update from our Western Berks. Mr.
We have to reorganize.
Oh.
I make a motion, we nominate Tom Boucher for chairman of the infrastructure committee.
Paul second.
Paul seconded.
All in favor, say aye. Have it. You got it.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Now we can start?
Now you can start.
Okay. So, public comment? All right, then we'll go into our subcommittee here with Western Berks.
Not much to report, other than the fact we are continuing to have discussions with the Corps of Engineers again. I don't know what else to say. It's crazy. They gave us the okay in December to start taking care of the trees and whatnot. They come- September, and then they come back with some new hydraulic test that we have to do in the ground, completely out of the clear. We thought everything was signed, sealed, delivered.
They dropped it on us at the pre-construction meeting. They suddenly decided that we had to have a hydraulic study to make sure that when we trench, that the water from the marsh doesn't push up through wherever we
Through
do.
the pipe. It's an engineering issue, which I guess you should have concern, but,
Apparently, the study itself is not a big deal, except does require numbers and data from the Corps.
it's crazy.
So, who knows if we've gotten those numbers yet? As of last Monday, we did not.
It is unreal. That's all I have. Really.
All right. All right, well, thank you for that. Yeah, I think it still has to be your report, or was it the paper or something?
Yes, yes. I'm sure Chip probably got a call from the Corps, because they don't like to have things like that in the paper. Tough.
Okay, Michelle.
So you all received a copy of my December 2019 report. Gonna multitask with two hands here. Scrolling through that, one of the biggest surprises, I think, of my code career came the day of my hearing for 1413 Dolphin Avenue. Let me find this on the report. So, the cat activity that had started over the summer obviously continued to get worse. I filed multiple citations against the property owner, had a neighbor as well as 3 employees from Kraft subpoenaed and ready to testify, but the property owner did not know that. She pled not guilty, the hearing was scheduled, and the day of the hearing, I got a phone call from Judge Taylor's office that she came in, changed her plea to guilty. She paid, I think it was over $800 per citation. And unfortunately, or fortunately, since Chris from Kraft went out the day of the hearing just to snap a photograph and actually caught a cat in an open window on the 2nd floor, I ended up filing all over. So I don't know what's gonna happen moving forward. Someone who claimed to be a male friend of hers called me later that day to ask if she had showed up for the court hearing. I explained what happened. He indicated she was not doing well recently. She stopped taking her medication. So I don't know where that leads us in the future, like I said. But the neighbor and everyone from Kraft are willing to, you know, show up again and testify if need be. So I'll let you know, once she responds to that hearing, how those things go. Other than that, I think the trend for general compliance within receipt of the notice is for the most part still continuing to occur. There's not a ton of long-term hangers-on like we had, you know, in early 2019 and over the summer. Note that the continued hearing for the Wyomissing Industrial Park will be this Wednesday at 3 p.m. I expect a rather contentious hearing, as one of the adjacent property owners has indicated that he is going to come and testify with his attorney and several of his tenants. So I'll let you know at workshop next week how that hearing went. And I sent as part of the agenda a summary of the 2019 building code activity, which was a breakdown of every building permit that was issued in 2019. And then at the very end gives a comparison of estimated cost of improvements and total fees that those permits totaled to compare that to 2018. In 2018, we had a total of 244 permits. Total estimated construction cost of $33,971,334. So yes, significant change in estimated improvement cost, but 2018 had almost the entire Vanity Fair complex rolled into, like, all the permits came in 2018 forfeit out of Vanity Fair. And the comparison in fees from 2018 to 2019, in 2018 it was $388,935.28. You do have in your 2019 numbers foundation for the College of Medicine. You do not have core and shell or any of the fit out, so I would expect that to be a significant bump to the 2020 numbers. You do have in your 2019 numbers the Teleplex building. Does anybody have any questions about either report?
No, just the guys, when I read this thing that says, I don't know, they run patrol here, whatever the word is they use. Do they just like randomly drive around, or they go by sections, or what?
They typically, they're doing one of two things. They're either following up on complaints that the violation notices went out, the certified came back, and they're, you know, within or due for compliance. So they're either out following up on those and then happen to see something else, or yeah, they do break the borough down into geographical areas. So, you know, they'll do Berkshire Heights as a whole. When they're done there, they'll do like the Penn Ave corridor as a whole, then Birdland, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Just check. But they don't tell you, you don't know where they're going next or any of that.
I mean, only if I get specific phone calls, you know, somebody calls me and complains about a property, and I'll shoot Chris an email and be like, hey, can you go take a look at this? He'll add that to his list of where he's going this week, but other than that, no. I mean, if I asked, he'd tell me.
Yeah, no, I was just curious.
Who are we contacting for the Hills, Wyomissing Hills pool?
Whoever's on the tax records, I mean, that's legally who we have to send the notice to, and they did receive it.
Have you heard anything? I know it says no changes this time, I saw that, but.
I think the general comment we received back is we have no money. Like, we wanna fix it, we know it's an issue, we have no money.
It's
Yeah.
true.
I know, depending how the borough feels about that, that's one that we could go for injunctive relief on, make the improvements and lien it.
That, I'm gonna go with history for me, a bunch of years ago when I was going to that pool and helping do stuff, they don't have any money.
I know they had to scrape together funds just to put the well in.
Yeah, there's an issue there too, I don't know what issue you're talking about, but,
The retaining wall.
okay.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, the trees, they can sense it when they cut trees, but. It's gonna be a
Matter of fact,
problem, that's gonna be a
I told
problem, man, to deal with.
I don't know how you guys feel about this, we had like a gentleman's agreement with them that, I guess we staged one of the Memorial Day parade there in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And sometime a few years back, we said, well, when it snows, we'll plow your sidewalks to let it stage. But now we can't even get by that wall, so I told the guys, let's not even bother plowing Wyomissing Hills pool anymore. I don't know if we'll get blowback from them or not, but it's a lot for us to stage on their parking lot for an hour once a year.
Do they need a retaining wall at that location, or could it just be regraded by the wall removed?
I haven't looked at enough detail, I don't know.
I think it needs a wall, 'cause it's pretty dramatic. I'm far from an engineer, but I think it needs a wall.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
That'd be,
Alright, next time I'm over that way, I'll just look at it when I drive past.
Yeah, take a look at it.
take a look at it, Jim, see what.
Sure.
It's not very big, I mean, it's not very long, it's probably 15 feet maybe.
Think about what it might cost to fix it.
I'm doing the same thing.
Sending yourself a reminder,
No, I was gonna pull it up on Google Maps and see if I could drive past it.
No, I know.
It's not gonna get fixed. Yeah. Go to the other end. There it is.
This imagery is from
So it's a little
2011.
more.
It probably didn't get better with age.
It's a lot more than 15 feet.
Yeah. It's, so I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 sidewalk panels, give or take, times 3.
15 yards, 15 yards.
No, that thing's probably 3 years old.
That's a tough question, because I think it's the way it was, I remember way back when, that may have been deeded, if it turns into something other than a pool, it goes back to the rightful owner or something like that.
Let him have it.
Can you take a look at it?
Okay.
Alright, he'll take a look at it. We got a lot of our own rec stuff to fix.
It's gonna be like $6,000 to replace the wall.
Yeah, it's still in a borough, and it's still unsightly.
Find out what it costs.
Yeah, but if we did it injunctively, we leave the property and then when it sells, we get the money back.
We better do some research on how that, I could be wrong again, but I don't think it can sell. I think if it stops, if it ceases to work as a pool, it reverts back.
I'll pull the,
Back to whatever.
Yeah, but the party to whom it may revert.
May not want to
refuse it.
Probably so. So there
Chris.
would be the possibility of getting paid attention.
do you want me to pull the deed? Yeah.
Right. Anything else, Michelle?
None, unless anybody has any questions.
Water system. Jim.
Haven't had any main breaks. We
Bless
approved
you.
the emergency bid with Spring Township last meeting, I guess that's in a paperwork shuffle at this point, is that correct? Chris? You don't need to take any more action.
No, I think we've done everything that we needed to do to get that going.
Alright, anything else with water stuff? Sewers?
I reviewed the tapes from this year's televising, we televised all the Birdland. Have a few items to do, a little bit, maybe 2 runs of manhole lining, a couple of point repairs, but the majority of the money hopefully will go towards this manhole lining I've been talking about for the last year or so. Try to stop infiltration. One thing I did find though, which will go along with item B, is there were 4 laterals, as Cam was running down the pipe, 4 laterals where this clear water is just coming out into the public sewer main. I knocked on all 4 doors, only talked to one person, and he had 2 sump pumps, but I couldn't figure out where it was going. The exit pipe out of the sump pump went to an outside wall, but there was nothing outside visually that I could see where it went. and there was a concrete cut in his garage. The one sump pump was in the garage, and the concrete was cut from the sump pump towards where the sanitary sewer stack goes down. So if I needed assistance with that, I'd like to be able to call Craft Code, say, hey, let's go look at this together. Because here's four, I don't know if they are, but possible sump pump issues going into the sanitary.
Where were you, what address?
There, and it makes some sort of sense to me, because I don't know, I have an old drawing that shows, on Thrush Road, where the pond is, opposite the YR Club, that was like the water company, the water service for the borough back in 1906 or something. So I think there's a lot of groundwater there, and all were in that area, Old Wyomissing Road, Thrush, Wyomissing Boulevard, right near Orchard. There were four, where it was, seemed like pretty clear water pretty consistently coming out.
All right, under Lehman. Bruce.
What is, they want to
Sewer.
give Jim authorization
know.
to take Kraft out there and look at those?
Oh, okay,
No, no, no,
make a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to that.
I'll make the motion. John seconds, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, okay. All right, Jim?
The I&I sewer letter, I crafted a draft from Jim's original letter. Chris has edited that. I don't know if you guys would like to read it ahead of time, but I think we're good to go at this point, to send it to, as a separate mailing to all residents. It does state on there, the amnesty period will be till September of 2020. That's the only thing that, I don't know what kind of time frame we give to it.
What is I&I?
Inflow and infiltration. Stormwater getting into the sanitary sewer.
You mean to extend that or change it?
Well,
or-
people will get this letter, let's say, in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and if they were interested enough to see, if their sump pump is tied to the sanitary sewer, they would have till the end of September 2020 to remedy that without any penalty. After September 20th, after the end of September 2020, if we found that there was a sump pump, they would be held up to whatever the ordinance says for penalty.
So the idea is to invite people to contact the borough and say, I might have an issue, and the borough would help them to resolve it without any penalty.
And you've had experience with that in another town.
Yeah.
And
Use it
you
up
think
till we're burned.
That number would be enough, then?
Is that time? We need the time to do it?
Yeah, 6
Yeah.
months.
Yeah, this is once you do it anyway.
And I think anybody who approaches the borough, should be given the courtesy of the opportunity to fix it. If they wait until the 11th hour.
I just meant that the time is a time frame is good.
Yeah, but
That gives them more.
I would think that would be the time for them to contact us and come up with a plan.
All right,
That's the biggest thing is getting it done voluntarily.
Yeah, I would say as a member of this committee, I think that's reasonable for him to do, let him go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Make a motion to send letters.
We did.
I don't know if he needs to,
Do we all do
I don't know if we
I
need
think
to,
it was from Jim.
that's it.
The letter's ready to go or
Yeah,
reviewed and good? Anybody want a copy? I guess we can get a copy if somebody.
I'll send a copy to Pat and he'll get it to you.
All right.
Let's get one in the mail.
Before we get it in the mail. All right, okay, we need any other action on that? Okay, all right. The sewer agreement.
Okay. Jim got a letter from the city about coming to compliance with new chemical content regulations. This is part of the city's upgrade of their treatment plan, and the EPA is requiring them to have a updated content of sewage regulation. Now, there's an existing regulation on the same topic in the Wyomissing code. What would be a little different about this is that the basis on which the violation would be determined would be changed from a per liter measurement, which is in the Wyomissing code, to a pounds volume.
Pounds per day or something.
Pounds per day. So the basis on which a violation would be computed is different in the city regulation. I suggested to Jim to share our version with the city contact and see if they would accept that. I don't know if you did that.
I did,
Got any response?
that was a month ago, and I've not heard anything back. Our numbers are more stringent than their numbers, so I don't see why they wouldn't accept our existing ordinance with this.
Now,
But I have not heard.
are there any chemicals or pollutants that are on their list that are not?
There was one or two of those, yes, so we're on their list, but not on our list.
I would think that at the least we would have to add those items. But as far as the standards, again, unless they are unwilling to accept our measurement methodology, it sounds like our standards are already compliant with what they're looking for. So, my advice is to wait and see, and if you don't hear anything in a couple of weeks, to ask them again. But they have sent the same letter to every municipality that connects to the city system, so this is just a blanket thing they're doing. I don't think anybody else is jumping on this any faster than we are. But it will require some follow-up. Could be more or less, but